We're here today with special guests Sarah and Will Reed, designers of Project Dreamscape.
Welcome to Design Diary, the podcast where you get to look inside my board game design notebook as well as what's going on inside my head. We look at a new word each day from the sense of mechanics, tone, theme, or inspiration for a full game. Today's word is
Conciliate. Appease, to gain as goodwill by pleasing acts, to make compatible, reconcile, to become friendly or agreeable. Now, I've heard of this word before, thankfully, and I hope, you guys have as well.
I've heard of conciliatory.
Interesting.
So that would be the root of that word.
I heard of it because I used to work in foreclosure law, and they have conciliation conferences where you try to work with the borrowers in order to have them, save their home.
Right. Yeah, so I know when I heard the word, it made me think of the experience I try to go for whenever we do positive loops in games, because mechanics are fun in and of themselves, but they don't necessarily lead to the best experience. And so therefore I need to have a good idea as to what that experience that I want is. And I believe conciliate really is the word I look for when I want an experience to feel good with the positive loop feature thrown into any sort of game.
Yeah, because that's one of the things that we really like is positive loops to us keep the games going forward. And so that's one of the things that we look at in game design is we want the game experience to keep going forward and have a more positive feel to the games.
But in doing so, we also want to make sure that the players are feeling, well, everything that conciliate means is they want to feel good about it. They want to feel reconciled. They want to feel that your move is an exciting move just as much as the one that they're planning to do, because that makes everyone at the table, well, just happier. So I did have an idea for a game that I'm still trying to figure out what would be the best way to approach it. Essentially, it would be a take that game, but flip it on its head, and instead of take that, it's a have this.
Oh, that's great.
So person A does something to person B that not only gives them something, but makes it so that person B is more effective in the game. And so the end goal is to be the person at the lowest because that's the person that gave the most. And I know that 3 players is probably necessary for the bottom range of it, just to have enough dynamics in there, unless you heavily add in some sort of AI. So while I was toying with that idea, I just decided to make this giant Euro-style game with as many positive loops as I possibly could, where everything that you do helps everyone, and there are a few loops that may just help yourself, but you'd create a business which creates another action space for other people to use, and then you'd also build new rules into the game to change the dynamics, and you'd build on basic squares to make them more exciting. Of course, I looked at it and it's like, I don't want to prototype this.
I know, yeah.
It's so massive.
Do you play 2-player a lot?
Yes, because Sarah and I, because I have a vision disability, it's really easy to play at home where I have all my equipment and such. So the easiest player count for us to play is always 2.
Yeah, so one of the things we've noticed so far, our games actually lean towards being best played either 2 players or solo, because we've been really working hard on making games that have solo, and I get to play test that part, which I really love developing. But yeah, mainly we're doing 2 players, so coming up with a concept that's minimum 3 players, one, that makes it difficult for us to play test, but then it also doesn't really fit in with what we want to put out there. We want to put out there more good 2-player games.
That's what I'm all about right now, is strong at its player count or exclusive at its player count. Like, I want a game that's 2-player only and is amazing at 2-player only. And I don't want like the 3-player that's okay variant. I say it's better as just being 2-player only than having a weak 3-player or a tacked on 4-player, or even a funky solo. Like, I'm all about just, I love a solo only, and I love a 2-player only, and I love a 2 to 4 player. Like, those are like my, like, what I'm like from publishing. That's what I'm looking for now, but it's also just what I'm excited about right now.
Yeah, just recently we had a game, Haven's Vault, that we had been heavily playtesting, and we were doing up to 4 players, and it works. But the problem we kept running across was the downtime between turns was just killing the game experience. So we finally made the tough decision. It's like, you know what? This just a 2-player game.
It works so well. We have strong solo rules. We have strong 2-player rules. It works really well back and forth with a 2-player. If it's not your turn, you're thinking about what you're doing on your turn, and then all of a sudden it's now your turn. So it works really well. Just now we just don't know what to do with it, because while you're looking for 2-player games, most publishers are not looking for 2-player only games.
And that's the answer that I got. I brought my game Pocket Kingdom to or Puppet Kingdom, not Puppet Puppet Kingdom to Unpub this year, and it's 2-player. It's a good 45 minutes to an hour thinky 2-player game. And a lot of people were just like, well, there's no publishers that will do this. And I said, well, that's great, because that means there's a market that's open, or there may not be a market, but there's a position that's open for that strong 2-player game, that if nobody's doing it, then somebody should be doing it.
Yeah, I was watching a video. This guy, Jim Sterling, very boisterous, opinionated reviewer, is entertaining as I don't know what. But he was talking about the video game industry, and he made an analogy with pasta sauce. Prego was being outsold by Ragu back in the 70s, and they brought in this guy to make the perfect pasta sauce. And what he ended up telling people is, and he learned this from his dealings with Pepsi, is like, there's no one answer. There's only perfect pasta sauces. And so he made up a whole bunch, tested them out, because Prego was even doing taste testing and found that their sauce even tasted better, but Ragu was still outselling them. Well, his conclusions was to look at the characteristics of the sauce, and people liked traditional, people liked spicy, and people liked chunky. Now, there was plenty of traditional, there was plenty of spicy, but no one was making chunky.
Ah, interesting.
So $600 million later, they found a niche.
Yeah.
They filled it. And it's not because there's not a customer base. It's customers just don't have the option. And if they get it, heck, they're going to be happy about it.
Well, it's kind of like that thing, like where do you open like a specialty record store? You do it on the same block as the existing specialty record store, and then people are going to come to that block for records.
Yes.
I love that kind of thing.
Yeah. Who knew that rising tides raise all ships?
Yep.
Yeah.
Let's work together and make it better.
That's cool. So the one thing that's interesting, though, is positive player interaction, which you guys are all about. It's hard in 2-player. Like, how do you, like, you're pushing the one person, up the one other person.
Yeah. Yeah, so one way that we typically do it now, because we have to do so much with 2-player, is we make an interesting action that's really good for you and good for everyone else.
Yeah.
So that's how we sneak in that feeling in there, because people don't mind if you have a good turn, because when you have a good turn, they benefit.
They're still benefiting. Yeah, that's great.
And so and then the trick of the game is then figuring out, is there enough dynamics there that you can actually make real differences based on the way you play and the skill that you bring to the game.
Yeah, because this reminds me of 2 games that I've really been attracted to recently, and it Dice Forge, and then Card Kingdom Valeria Card.
Yeah, you got it.
Valeria Card Kingdom. Okay, too many different words. But what they do that I really like is on everybody's turn, everybody gains something. Now, it can make it a little messy to try to keep track of, is it my turn, is it your turn? But I love that positive loop of it's possible for you to be building up, and you're not just sitting there twiddling your thumbs, and you're actually gaining stuff. Granted, with both of them, it's random because it's dice-based, but then you're like, oh, you got to roll a 2. You need to roll a 2. Or with Dice Forge, I need that side that has 4 money. If I get 4 money, then I can, on my turn, buy this thing. And I love those games for that player interaction of everybody gains, and I think that's kind of where we come from, is you can do it in a 2-player game. It's just whatever the benefit is, it's greater for the person whose active turn it is, and then lesser for everybody else, or in a 2-player game, the other person.
I did something like that in my game Blood Royals, where you're rolling up to 5 dice on your turn, and you have a variety of ways that you can use them. If you roll 1 die, you get to choose any face except for the top. If you roll 2 dice, you just get them. If you roll 3 and you roll any set of doubles, your opponent gets one of those doubles. And then as you get higher, the opponent gets more. So if you roll 4 dice, you have choice of any 2 dice, but your opponent gets the other 2. And if you roll 5, you get... It's crazy at 5. But the more that you take for yourself, the more your opponent also gets on your turn. And that's 2-player only. So I wasn't thinking of it in a heavily, I want to make this positive player interaction, but I did want to sort of buff the active player a little bit. So I sort of took it from the opposite end, where I wanted to bring down the active player by sort of bringing up their opponent. Yeah,
because you want essentially what you want is the opponent to be excited on your turn. Yeah. So that way you have that intense interaction and engagement on every aspect of the game. We approached on Project Dreamscape one ability that on the surface seems mean, but has a sneaky element underlying it of that Conciliate. It's Night Terror. So in Project Dreamscape, you have a currency of a Z-stack, and these are just the face-down cards in front of you that you tap as money.
Yeah.
And Night Terror, makes an opponent discard one of those. So on the surface, oh man, you lost some money. However, at the end of the game, you score and subtract however many Z cards you have.
Yeah.
So not only are you maybe slowing someone down at the moment, but you're essentially giving them points at the end of the game.
Yeah, it's like giving them a call, right?
Right.
Yeah. And everybody during playtesting, it was so crazy. Everybody's like, can I Night Terror myself? And we're like, no.
When they finally caught on to...
Yeah.
Yes, once they finally caught on to, oh my God, I just gave my opponent points. They're like, I want to do it to myself. And we're like, no, that's not how the card is balanced.
That's
it's
awesome.
this way for a reason. But I was so many questions of, I'm going to Night Terror. Oh, nope, it says opponent. You have to do the opponent.
I love this because you kind of want to just sit there and be quiet and wait for them to find it out on their own, and sometimes you just want to be like, no,
Yeah.
Here's why.
Yep. Well, it's and teaching people that game at the beginning, we always say at the beginning of your turn, you have the option to take a Z card, and people are always like, well, I'm just going to take a Z card every single turn, and I'm like, don't forget, they're negative points at the end of the game, and I will repeat myself several times. But until it gets over halfway through the game, and then they start realizing, oh no, they've got 10 Z cards, which is way too much, and they're going to get negative 10 points.
Yeah, so. Please, someone Night Terror me. Please, someone Night Terror.
That's amazing.
Yeah, the other weird thing about that, game is, so the base has 8 different abilities, and then we have a few more in the box. But when people started playing, you had groupthink that always came up. And the funny thing is, it was never on the same ability.
Wow.
So, so this is a different way, I guess, Conciliate works.
Because everybody agrees.
Agrees.
It's subconsciously, they didn't verbally say, oh, we're all going to think this ability is the best, but like one person would outshine, like they would take on to I can't even think now.
Shifting
dreams.
Yeah.
And they would use it in some awesome way, and then everybody around the table would see that, and now they're like, oh my god, this card is overpowered. Everybody was trying to use that card. And so we'd get, like, when people would play test the game, separately from us, they'd download the print and play, we'd get feedback. Card A is overpowered. Card C is overpowered. And these were different groups, and each group said a different card was overpowered. And it took us a while to figure out what was going on until we finally actually saw it in our play tests. Then we finally saw, oh, unfortunately, the game suffers groupthink. And here's the thing. The person that usually runs away with the game is the person who can break out of the groupthink.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's neat. That's a fun game. I played it with Mike Mullins. Whenever we get together, he brings the best games, and that was one of them that I think we got together at like a Dunkin' Donuts to do testing, and he always insists that we're not going to, before we test any games, we need to play published games, and that was one of the ones he brought that I was just like, I need to find this, and I need to buy it, and, I do. I absolutely need to find it and buy it.
I think we might have a few copies left. We can talk offline.
There we go. We can work that out.
We can conciliate.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Bring it all back. Well, I want you to tell everyone how they can get in touch with you, follow you, and find you online.
Well, I'm the face of our duo, so you can find me on Twitter at EurogamerGirl. That's mostly where I am. I'm not on Board Game Geek as much as I used to be, but my username there is Silva Shadow, SilvaShado.
Otherwise, I just write a lot of Lego articles, so you can find me on the Brick Blogger under the contributors.
Very cool. Well, thank you for doing this.
Yeah, we have two very expensive...
What's that?
I was just saying we have two very expensive hobbies, Lego and board games, but we love them both.
I have a storage unit that's almost exclusively filled with Lego that not only is Lego expensive, I'm paying to store it every month. So, yeah. Yeah.
Ouch.
But I do know I could sell it and probably make my money back at some point.
Yeah, at some point, yeah.
All right, well, thanks again. This was really fun, and we'll do it again.